You know how YouTube is full of DIY how-to projects that look really easy until you try them yourself? It turns out that building an arched pond bridge like this one is actually a lot easier than it looks.
Bite-sized garden.
So what are you actually going to need to do it? I'm using a jigsaw, a drill and a drop saw, but you could use a circular saw. I've also got a tape measure, a pencil, earmuffs and safety glasses, a decking spacer and a couple of clamps, although those last two are not essential. To make the frame of the bridge, I'm using 140 by 35 millimeter structural treated pine. It's strong, it's reasonably priced, and being treated pine, it's going to last a lot longer out in the weather. Which brings me to the timber that's going to sit on top. This is treated decking pine, 90 mils wide. When I bought the framing planks, I had them cut down to two 180 mil and two 60 mil lengths. And with the decking timber, I got 2.4 metre lengths of those. I'm also using 8 by 90 degree angles to help hold the frame together, some long screws that will help add rigidity to the frame, and some shorter decking screws to keep the timbers on top. The original idea was to build it 150 centimetres long, but I found that on the other side of the bridge from the deck, it was a little bit lower, so I decided to add 10 centimetres on that side and have the slope go down just a little bit more. Now, a flat bridge is fine, but an arch is going to be a whole lot nicer, and it turns out that it's actually really quite easy to make an arch out of these two straight planks. What you want to do is cut a curve off the bottom and then stick that on the top. First, you need to mark up the curve of each arch. A simple way to do this is with a bendy piece of wood. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it to be even on both sides, so take the time to make sure they match. A simple measure at 1/4, 1/2 and 3/4 will keep you out of trouble. An old boss once told me to measure twice and cut once, so I measured about 15 times. With the arches cut out and ready to put together, I wanted to continue that arch line onto the additional 10 centimetres I'd added on the path side of the bridge. Again, I didn't need to match it perfectly, but I did want to make it fairly even. Time to put the arches together. It's a really good idea to pre-drill everything. I'll be putting in 1 screw on each side on the top and then 3 in the middle underneath, and also plenty of wood glue on the joint itself. Gently place your arch on top and then fix in place with the 2 top screws. Then add the 3 bottom screws and repeat the process on the second arch. Now that we have our 2 arches, time to attach the cross beams. Mark up where you want them to be. Again, it doesn't need to be exact, but it is nice to have things looking neat and symmetrical, if you can manage it. Using the 90-degree angles here make it really quick and easy. I use my decking screws to attach these, but if I had my time again, I'd use some other ones because I actually ran out of decking screws later on and had to steal them back, but no one would have known that if I hadn't just told you. Once you're happy that everything is as it should be, it's a good idea to put it in place and to see if it's going to work out as you imagined. If everything is okay, then go ahead and finish fixing the angles in place, and it's a good idea to add some lateral screws for extra stability. I put 4 on each side. If the line down here bothers you, you can patch it up with some filler, but I'm going to leave it as it is. Next, it's time to cut down our decking. I'm going for 80 centimetres, so I have a small overhang on each side. If you're after a more exact look on the edges of your bridge, you can leave these timbers a little bit longer and come back and trim them with a circular saw later on. For me, I like that slightly uneven, rustic look. Just feels a little bit more handcrafted. Once everything's cut, it's time to round off the edges. You don't really need to do it to the top of the frame, but I like the way it feels when everything's got the same smooth, rounded edge. With everything sanded down, it's time to attach the decking timber for the slats on top. You want to face these grooves down. Some people think you put them up to make the deck non-slip, but from what I understand, they are designed to help airflow underneath and keep moisture out of the joins. As I said earlier, it's a really good idea to pre-drill your holes, and with this decking timber, it's an absolute necessity because it does split really easily if you don't. This is where the little spacer comes in handy. It helps you line up the timber and keep the spacing even. It definitely makes life easier. I had tallied up the widths and gaps, and so was pretty confident I had an even, nice overhang at each end, but I still only put one screw on each side until I was confident that they were all in the right place. It's also a good idea to measure constantly to make sure that the overhang is even on each side. Once I was confident that everything was in the right place, I pre-drilled the rest of the holes and fixed all the other screws in place. Now, given this was brand new timber, I probably should have put a pre-stain prep on it to dry it out a little bit more. As you can see, the timber just didn't want to take in the stain, but after a few extra coats, it looked fine. You probably don't need to stain the underside. I gave it a couple of coats and left it at that. Now it's time to put the finished bridge in place. Once in place, the rocks around need a little rearranging so the bridge could sit naturally on the ground. The height sits perfectly on the deck side and feels almost like an extension of the deck itself. On the other side, the extra 10 centimetres and the little drop off is perfect. A few rocks and some native grasses planted on each side, and suddenly it looks like it's been here for years. Under the bridge on this side is an area that I hope will become a really nice protected space for frogs to burrow and make a home. There are some rocks here to keep cat paws and birds out, and some soft sandy soil underneath, protected on both sides by the arches, should be exactly what's needed. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. I really hope this has inspired you to get out there and make a bridge of your own. By the way, if you are looking for some really cool inspiration, just check out Pinterest. Have a look on the boards there. There are some amazing, much more ambitious bridges than this one. Would you like to meet my dog?